Greetings, everybody. I'm happy to be here for NSO Developer Days. I'm Matt Hayes, the Executive Director of Network Automation and Shared Services at Cox. Just to jump right in, give you guys a little bit of our company profile. So Cox Communications is we're the third largest MSO. That's multi-service operator, or otherwise also known as cable company in North America. And this is just a little bit of our financials. I mean, Cox is an $11 billion revenue company. Commercial services is a big piece of that, and we have about just north of 6 million high-speed internet customers. Of course, we're a video, voice, and a home automation company as well. But that's just a little bit about Cox, where we sit. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you guys about is a change that we made in terms of how we engage with Cisco professional services and how they have helped augment our own internal staff in terms of how we use BPA and NSO. What's important to note is we've had BPA and NSO in our network for a number of years, but up until about June of 2019, we were operating it in a much different approach, and we needed to make some changes. So some of the changes that we made is we went to what's called a factory development model engagement with Cisco, and previous to that, our operating model was that we had basically every new automation feature functionality was looked at as a individual statement of work. So in the engagement, I would say, from the network engineering and operations teams was not really direct contact. We were going through some of our own internal IT teams to identify kind of priorities, and then those were then communicated from the IT team over to a Cisco development team. And with each statement of work, there was supply chain involvement in terms of the overall process, and it was very cumbersome, and frankly, it was not very effective. So one of the changes that we made is we really integrated our teams. Really, the development, we have development architects, we have software development teams from Cisco Professional Services, and they're really directly in contact with our network engineering and operations teams to help deliver on really a lot of business cases. In our pipeline to deliver these things has greatly improved over the last 10 months. So with this representation of all these different resources here, you can see it's really an integration. There's Cox members involved in this team, but the structure that we have and the partnership that we have is really like we're operating like one team. Additionally, this is a little bit of the functional components, like that team, that sort of organization, people, and role process chart that you just saw previously. This is really more a functional view of that team, and some of the things that we think are most important, into having a productive and effective network automation team. Some of the things that are really important to us is that we want to create a network automation that is reusable. We want to create network automation that is standardized. Anytime we have a different use case, whether it's a software, like a software upgrade process, we wanted to create real consistency, whether it's a CMTS or a metro router or a backbone router. One of the things that we've done in terms of the approach that we've taken is we've really adopted a lot of the scaled agile framework in terms of how we do demand management, intake, and prioritization. In fact, we've got every Tuesday we've got a 1-hour call with all of our stakeholders that includes the development team, it includes the architect, it includes the project managers, but it also includes really an opportunity for anyone within our network engineering and operations team to submit a request for a potential automation use case. And in that forum, we talk about the potential value of it. We talk about any specific integrations that would be required in order to make the most effective automation use case. And we really help shape what that automation solution will look like. And that's been a really effective forum, because we've got all the right players there that can help sort of either challenge the use case or help flesh out and develop the use case. And then I would also say that that's also really helped. We've got a good understanding on the back end of how what the overall demand management capability looks like. One of the things that I wanted to share is really the hops. I'm sorry, the way that we leverage BPA and NSO. We put all those two components into a box that we call hops. And that's really not to confuse anyone, but that's just our own internal code name for how we've labeled the network automation platform that is BPA and NSO. But one of the things that's been I would say powerful is just the number of integrations that we have. We don't view network automation, and I know a lot of the people in this conference and in this community, we don't view network automation as really just simply how we interact with devices on a CLI. We're not just trying to automate things that are done through CLI. We're trying to actually use network automation to change the business process. And I would say the reason that hops has been more successful for us is because it's connected into our Remedy, our UET ticketing system. It's connected into Atmos. Atmos it's really just it's a mobile application that our field service technicians use. So they can bar scan or barcode scan in devices that really triggers a whole auto provisioning functionality. But of course we had to integrate with Atmos in order to unlock some of the power of BPA and NSO. Additionally, we have integrations with IP control. That's our entire IP management database. And then Granite for us, that is an inventory management system. So without those integrations, we would still end up with network operations folks kind of swivel chairing into our IP database or swivel chairing into our Granite database to go enter in new devices that we've turned up. But as we've started to adopt some of these use cases of zero touch provisioning and software upgrades, pre and post checks, we can update things immediately right into our UET ticketing system. And basically the hops platform does that as part of the workflow. When we're turning up a new device, hops will do the order entry of that new device into our inventory management system. So these are the really kind of game-changing capabilities that we've got in place today with hops. And like I said, it's because it's tightly integrated with some of our back end BSS and OSS systems that's made it powerful. And then on the left side of this diagram here, that's really just connecting to our network infrastructure. So you see hub router, RPA and DPA. Those are really data center like switches that connect into our access network. And then the CVR8s represent our CMTS platform, which is connects all of our 6 million high-speed internet customers to the rest of the internet. So left side of the chart is really all the network components, our network infrastructure effectively that hops communicates with. And then down below, SmartFi is really it's really like an element management system for cable access. So for CVR8s and for the RPDs, that's remote PHY devices is what RPD stands for. But there's really all those components are tied together to create network orchestration. And one of our primary focuses for the use of hops, and I would say the initial use cases, has been in the cable access network, but we're certainly starting to identify opportunities where we can, reuse some of the benefit that we have in our commercial services network and in our metro network as well. So some of the key features that have been delivered to date, and this is really just over the course of the last 10 months, we've implemented pre and post checks on all of our CMTSs and our hub routers. So really, we leverage that and execute that anytime we go into a maintenance. Whether it was a software upgrade or maybe it was a quarterly update, change in an access list or any kinds of things like that, we run these pre and post checks. And it's really been a big time savings effort for us. Not only time savings, but it's also, when you think about when you leverage network automation to do pre and post checks, now you gain a level of precision in work that just shouldn't be done by a network engineer, a human network engineer. The automation platform can run these things much more effectively. Running the pre and post check, doing the diff, and then populating anything that's interesting into our remedy ticketing system so that we create this trail for that as well. And then another big one that I touched on really briefly was this provisioning and really consider it like a zero touch provisioning of a remote PHY device. In remote PHY devices in cable access, they're a big deal, in terms of the volume and the number of these devices that we have. Remote PHY devices, they sit in a clamshell that hangs on either a telephone wire or a dog house, which is like some of those green dog houses you guys have seen on your front yards or in the neighborhood. But there's thousands of these things that we're intending to deploy. We'll end up deploying at least 60 to 100,000 of these things in the next couple of years. So as you can imagine, they're not the types of, just given the volume, it's not the kind of thing that you want to have, a field service technician connecting his laptop to in order to provision, right? Because there's a lot of IP information in this. There's associations to which video service groups and cable service groups it's associated with back in at the head end. And it's a relatively complex device. So what we've done is we built, an integration with this Atmos mobile app. So our technicians now the process is our technicians will, basically barcode scan in the physical device that they're hanging. They'll use a drop-down menu and associate the name of that device. And then, BPA and NSO in the back end then go and orchestrate all that with Smart PHY, with our Granite, inventory management system, and with our remedy ticketing system, that then goes and activates this device on the network and provisions all the flow through provisioning through the CMTS, all the security configuration that would be required, all the IP configuration that's required for it, and basically turns up this device on the network. It's an operation that happens, within a minute from them sitting there. So it's really been an effective win for us in terms of validating and showing some of the investment back that we've made in this network automation platform to really changing and optimizing our business operations and processes. Another one that has been a big win for us is just in terms of our OS upgrades. So CBR8, that's our CMTS, and NCS is our metro routers. We typically go through a software upgrade 2 to 3 times a year across those platforms. We've got about 800 CMTSs. We have, I believe, about 550 NCS routers and growing. So the operation before was, we opened a ticket, we had a network engineer, manage the software upgrade process, following a PDF or a Word document that was basically a mop that was crafted by another, design and sustaining engineering team. And the process was quite cumbersome. I mean, just the amount of time that it took to go through an OS upgrade for our CMTS platform was in the 3-month time frame, right? So we were kind of continuously in a cycle of OS upgrades, and there might be a 3 to 5 month gap between the next OS upgrade cycle that would have to happen. We still have to work through and optimize some of our business processes, but we've basically taken a lot of the, that mop and, fit that into a workflow within BPA and NSO. So now we're executing software upgrades, not only with greater precision, but with a reduced burden and time on the engineer that has to operate those. We're still using an engineer to operate those OS upgrades in case something goes awry, but the number of simultaneous upgrades that our engineers can do within a single maintenance window, I mean, we're probably somewhere in the order of 7 to 10x of what we could do previously when it was just, basically an engineer managing a mop through the CLI. Just a couple of things on the horizon, and this roadmap is, fairly cable access centric in terms of the different, use, like network automation use cases that we have. But zero touch provisioning, one of the more recent, the near term focuses is around zero touch provisioning for these RPAs and DPAs. And those are really, think of those as like, top of rack switches within our data centers. But we're deploying, as we deploy, tens of thousands of remote PHY devices, all of those require, 10 gig Ethernet connectivity in the head ends to connect those back to the network. So as you can imagine, the RPAs, that's the remote PHY aggregation device, and the DPAs, which is the digital PIC aggregation device. All those switches, we're deploying those, in the hundreds and thousands of devices as well. And guess what? They all look fairly cookie cutter, and they make a good use case for doing a zero touch provisioning. Bessemer RPD, so we're looking at adding another supplier of our remote PHY devices. So, as we think about those as a little bit more commodity, it's important for us to be able to turn up, and evolve really the cable access network that we've built the automation around. But there's an awful lot of development too as you move into mid-split configuration automation. So what that means is one of the things that we're looking to enhance our network is growing the upstream capacity. So the idea of moving the spectrum to create more upstream bandwidth, we've got to reallocate, downstream versus upstream frequency in terms of how our cable access network is architected. And as we're enabling mid-split, there's a lot of work that has to happen up front to do that. But the fact that we can build, automation capabilities, again, reusing some of those components like we talked about the mobile app, we're going to have our field service technicians going out and removing a bunch of, bypass filters and things like that in the outside plant. And when they're ready, all they need to do is basically go in and use that mobile app to scan in the remote PHY device again. And we're going to reuse a lot of the same components that we did to build RPD activation. We're going to reuse those to create the capability to enable the mid-split, which is going to jack up the upstream throughput that we'll be able to offer for our customers. But again, it's a network upgrade. If we didn't have network automation capability to do that, there'd be an awful lot of phone call coordination between the outside plant technicians, the field service technicians, our network operations center, and then our network engineers who are back, banging away on a CLI, reconfiguring the CMTS. So those are no longer required now. We're able to do all this with, reusing a lot of the same, underlying and foundational work that we built around RPD activation to enable this mid-split capability. Yes, I got another thing. The last thing I'll point out, relative to this slide is, we're also looking at as we're turning up XGS PON, so that's a 10 gig variation of PON. We're looking at doing a zero-touch provisioning, very, very similar to what we did with the RPDs. And there's a lot of similarities. The 10 gig OLTs that we're deploying, they come in a clamshell. The same team that deploys the remote PHY devices is going to be hanging these things on a wire or in a doghouse. We're going to reuse, again, a lot of the same functionality that we built around scanning in the device and then having BPA and NSO and effectively our HOPS infrastructure do all of the, provisioning of that OLT. So that's another, sort of big win that we're looking at as we roll out 10 gig PON. We currently deploy GPON, but our intent is to upgrade that to all 10 gig PON for all new greenfield that we build in the second half of this year. So this is just a look at, it's a little bit more of an exhaustive look at some of the feature functionality that we're looking at pipelining and building within HOPS. But the, I don't want to sort of drain this one, but I guess I'll just leave this in here for reference in case you guys want to have it as an artifact to go back and take a peek at. But I think the important thing to point out here is that, this tool probably, it started out with a clear focus on cable access, and I talked a lot about CMTSs and remote PHY devices, but really we're expanding beyond that, and trying to build success in other areas, right? Like we have data center, we have metro, we have the PON access network as well. There's a lot of different wins that we know we can identify in other areas. So here you can see in this particular case is basically the RPD activation case. And it's important for us to do that because, as we're asking for continued investment in some of these platforms and in the labor and the teams that support these things, we've got to be able to tie back that, the real business benefit. Some of them are obvious, but even if they're obvious, we want to be able to illustrate them with, consistent measures. So, we're looking at anytime we have time savings, anytime we have, precision gains or, more reliable network, we want to try to be able to associate those to something that makes business sense. So that's all I really wanted to illustrate in this last slide here. But no, I think it's, I guess just in wrap up, overall, I've been really excited to be a part of the network automation team. In fact, when my team first inherited sort of a leadership role with BPA and NSO just about a year ago, I was in a different role. And, for myself and my team, through the time, I would say that some of the success that we've had here and how our leadership understands just the role that network automation is going to play for our future, we've had an organization change. And now, my role used to be focused in the access network, and now my role is focused in network automation. And I have, a team of folks that are focused just on network automation. So I think that's really been, a testament to some of the success that we've had, but also how, as an organization, we believe it's, network automation is going to be a really important part of our future and how we think about network operations. And we've got a lot of commitment from our leadership, and we're continuing to build momentum in that. So, anyways, excited about the journey, excited about the opportunity that BPA and NSO has already created for us, but also some of the future that we think is bright with BPA and NSO moving forward. So yeah, happy to open it up to any questions from there.
Hi there, Matt. Great presentation, really come a long way with your automation. So when you've done your automation, when it comes to skills and the staffing, have you found it a hard time and to make the transition, find the right competence for your team?
Yeah, good question. I mean, there's certainly a bilingual component to a network automation engineer, and a few of my folks are here on at NSO Developer Days, but the traditional background for a network engineer, specifically at Cox, you came up and you cut your teeth through the CLI and you learned the different technologies. We are having to really retool a skill set, but there's definitely a group of folks who are eager to learn and pick up some of the new capabilities and technologies. Learning an Ansible skill set, or even learning more about development through Camunda and workflows within BPA. It's definitely, we think of it as kind of bilingual engineers are the most valuable ones, the ones that understand network operations and even specifics of how networks were operated previously. But it's a skill set and a muscle that we're trying to grow, and it's going to take time. I mean, I think we've got a great start, but we think about it really, as a culturally too. I mean, we're trying to build a community practice around around network automation. So we're trying to create opportunities to really grow the muscle and take the folks who have taken the first steps at adopting it and learning the new technology to help lead others.
That's great. So what kind of roles do you primarily have in your team? So do you mostly have network engineers that are transitioning to more of a software architecture role in the automation, or do you have pure software engineers as well?
Yeah, we're really building a lot of the team structure, around software development, and scaled agile is one of the models that we like, where we put some of the program structure around intake and demand management, but then also agile and Scrum kind of based teams to do the software development. In the engagement here that we have with BPA and NSO, I mean, we are fairly heavily leveraging the partnership for some of that agile and development team, but looking to grow some of that internally as well. We want to be able to move towards self-sufficiency, in terms of keeping up to date life cycle of some of these automation capabilities, but also growing new ones.
That's good. So how does this affect your network, and what kind of metrics do you see changing as you introduce more automation? Do you see an improvement in efficiency and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, we're, like I was talking about in the presentation there. I mean, we're developing really sort of a common approach to how we analyze and measure the return on investment for the different automation use cases that we're developing. And those things are network precision, their data integrity, of course, their time savings, and it's like we're not just changing the way that we interact with the network, we're changing the overall business process. So we're trying to tie back all those things into financial measures to really keep the investment growing, and to make sure that our leadership and our finance folks are aware of the investments that we're making really do tie back into OpEx savings.
Okay, thanks a lot. I think that's all the questions we had. Maybe Niklas can take it over.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Matt. It was an interesting presentation on Cox automation journey. And thank you, Victor.